Could the Dallas Cowboys select an offensive guard in round one? All that and more in this episode of Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on Cowboys. Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, first day of free agency is like 2 weeks away for the Dallas Cowboys. How are you doing today, sir?
I was just gonna say, like, it's illegal tampering, first day of free agency. So what does that mean for Cowboys fans? We are going to talk about the draft. That's what today's show is about.
Yeah. So listen, we are doing this show an hour after the legal tampering period kicked off.
So we should be safe from any Cowboys news.
If there happens to be some Cowboys news as we're doing this show, which there won't be, we will update you guys. But today, Landon, we are talking about some draft prospects. We've covered corners. We've covered some tight ends. I want to talk about some of the guards in this class. Let's start with Osiris Torrence, the Florida guard. I think for most people, the number one interior offensive lineman on the board. What did you think about him when you watched his tape?
We kind of had gone over these prospects a little bit when we talked about Senior Bowl guys and looked at some of these folks. This was the guy that I definitely came away the most impressed with the second viewing. Just very, very large, tall, with long arms and huge hands, just a wide body with thick legs. I mean, he looks the part of a guard, just kind of not as tall. I mean, probably under 6'5". He's just short of 6'5", but 300. I mean, depending on where we're weighing him, whether it's the Combine or Senior Bowl, somewhere in the 325 to 340 range, I would say, weight wise. Powerful player, huge hands, clamp on you, and he can control you, and you just see him in tape just tossing folks at times. Violently strikes blitzers that are attempting to spike him. He's just a mean, tough guy who will. I mean, you see him throwing headbutts on defensive tackles at times, in order to secure leverage and double teams in inside zone. He gets his backside hand in position, will just drive through people. He just moves body. The thing that was shocking about it to me is how good he is in pass protection. I mean, he's not necessarily a huge. He is huge. He's not necessarily a fantastic foot athlete, but he's so big and he operates in such tight spaces that he can easily and deftly kind of get around in the phone booth of where the guard plays, and guys just can't really slip past him. And he's so physical that, even blitzers as they come in, he'll throw a shot at them and it will disrupt their blitz so much that even if they stayed on their feet, that they can't make it, in through the hole to kind of disrupt. Like I mentioned, very good feet for such a big guy. I mean, he can get across the face on an interior defensive lineman on the backside and get them sealed off in wide zone. He can, obviously we talked about pass protection and moving that way. I think he's, physically a specimen at the guard position because of his enormous size and the way he's able to move. Where does he win? I think he is a powerful body moving offensive guard only. I will say that the downside with him versus maybe these other two guys, is that he is definitely like purely a guard.
He's purely a guard. Yep.
Like, I don't know. I didn't see any snaps of him playing center or any of that stuff.
I've got the snap breakdown. So in 2019, he played 850 snaps at left guard. And then for the rest of his career, over 2,000 snaps at right guard. So, I mean, if we're projecting this to Dallas, at least there's a full season of him playing left guard, because that's frankly where he'd play for the Cowboys, right?
Yeah.
But there's not a lot of position flex here for him, which is fine. It's fine.
Yeah. And the last thing I would just add is that, he projects kind of as a power guard, it looks like, but he has a ton of zone blocking experience, so he can get to the second level and erase targets if he needs to. Where does he win? Big guard with power that can move and unanswered questions. I mean, honestly, I just wonder like where his ceiling is, like he's a high floor player, I feel like. And I will say that it's very encouraging that you saw him step up a level of competition this last year and then end up playing better than he had at Louisiana. So, I think he's a very high floor guard. The question is how much better can he get from here? Because he's already pretty well developed.
So I was able last night to watch all of the pressures that he's allowed over the last 4 seasons. And I can tell you...
Short video?
Yeah. Well, it is a short video. Surprising compared to some of the offensive linemen in this class. I only saw one time that he lost with power, and it was against Jalen Carter. He got a little bit wide, and Carter got up underneath him, and he moved him back. That's it. Like, if he's going to lose, it's going to be these, quicker defensive tackle that can kind of get over him, fast or kind of shoot gaps, but you aren't going to see him lose with power at all. Like, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, he's big and strong, and he's got length and big hands. Like those kind of levers really can have an effect on power movers. They just can't, and he drops his weight so cleanly. For such a big guy, that he creates leverage. He's got long arms and strong hands, and that's a very difficult recipe for defensive tackles to get around.
And really quickly, before we move on, his fit with the Cowboys, right? Because he would be playing left guard with the idea that Tyler Smith long-term is playing left tackle. The positives there are, I mean, you're going to be able to move some people on that left side, right? Like that's the thing here is it's not going to be the most clean for pass protection stuff, but you're going to be able to move dudes.
Yeah, I mean the downside, the only downside here is kind of a purely fit situation for the Cowboys, right? Like because we'll talk about the other two, but the position flex that the other two provide kind of make them a little bit better of a projection as to where you would put them year one. Yep. It becomes difficult with Osiris because he's just a guard. That if you're getting Osiris, you're getting him at 26. Like I don't think he's not going to last to your second round pick. So if you're drafting him in the first round, that means you want to start him, and that means what are you doing with Torrence Smith? What are you doing with Tyler Smith? So that's the only kind of projection issue I have with him for the Cowboys is exactly how are you going to arrange that?
I think it's more likely they draft Osiris Torrence if they don't bring back Tyron Smith, right?
Yeah.
I think
it sounds like they're bringing Tyron Smith back. So that's why
it might just not make sense for the Cowboys. However, there is another guard in this class that I do think makes a lot of sense for the Cowboys at pick number 26. We'll get to that one next. This episode is brought to you by the Ultimate Football GM app. You've heard us talk about this mobile game before. And if you think you'd make a good GM, you've got to give this game a try. It's not quite as easy to create your own dynasty. You need to check this one out. When you play Ultimate Football GM, you get to control and manage every strategic aspect of your team as you play through seasons and lead your team to glory, trying to build a historic dynasty. It's so much fun, and it's so stinking hard. That's why I love this, right? Like, it's not easy. It's not like, man, you just go in there and make this awesome team and you're going to win championships forever. Like, it's very, very challenging. With the Ultimate Football GM app, you're going to be responsible for controlling the destiny of your franchise by hiring the right coaches and coordinators, managing all the finances, including negotiating players' salaries and their terms. Plus, you have to navigate through free agency, the draft, injuries, player personnel issues. There's some locker room issues that you even have to deal with, and all the ups and downs of the season. All of this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM is completely free and playable offline, so you can play on the go as you want to and when you want to. Locked On Cowboy listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On, all in caps, in the game store. That is Locked On, all in caps, so make sure you check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up in the app stores. That is ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today.
Cowboys fans really should put their money where their mouth is at the Ultimate GM app. If you're talking all day about the Joneses not signing, folks, Get on Ultimate GM and sign all the free agents to your heart's content. Make yourself feel better.
There you go. All right, Lena, let's talk about our next offensive guard. It's Steve Avila from TCU, somebody who we talked about on Friday's show. What did you think when you dove into the tape?
Yeah, I'm still, real big fan of his. Ideal interior offensive line build. He's compact with thick thighs and midsection that he carries very well. He carries it high and he moves very well with that weight. He's a little bit more of a compact player than what you see from Osiris Torrence. He's got a little bit shorter arms, a little bit smaller hands, but he carries about similar weight despite being an inch shorter. And does move athletically despite kind of being so compact. He played all 5 spots in college. His over 2,000 snap career. He has experience in zone and gap run schemes. He took some center snaps at the Senior Bowl. He played almost exclusively center in 2021. And honestly, having gone back and watched a little more of that tape, he may be a better center than he is a guard. Or at least his tape at center may be as good as it was at guard.
I kind of think that's maybe his best position, honestly.
Yeah. I think he has the capability of being a special center because he's so big and strong. You just don't see centers like that, that can still move. So he has great feet. He's always moving. He's nimble for a guy his size. He's always looking for work. He's always very active with his, not getting lazy when he's uncovered, and he's always looking to help his teammates. There are some inconsistencies in his hand placement at times. And I think that, where Osiris may have had a little bit of that too. His hands are so big that he just controls guys in a way that I think he gets away with a little bit, but I don't know that someone like Avila necessarily will. So he does definitely need to improve that. When bull rushed, he drops his hips to anchor and gets his hands above his eyes when engaged. I mean, it's just really great to watch. I mean, he just doesn't get moved in that way. Throws his weight around, physical with his hip checks, adjusting leverage and double teams. He's good at kind of making small adjustments to secure the double team before getting to the second level. That's what you see a lot of times with some of these younger guards is they're not. There's one thing about securing getting your block in on the double team and then getting to the second level like it's procedural, but like he does a really good job, and frankly all these guys do a really good job of working with their teammates in securing the block before getting to the second level, which I think is really important. Plays with confidence of a player who is assignment sound. He works through twists and stunts with ease, and this is one thing where I think he's a little bit better than Osiris is that I think he takes on attacks from his sides a little bit better. Osiris, like when he gets spiked, can sometimes get just taken out a little bit when he's not paying attention. He throws his weight around with physical and with hip checks and adjusting leverage and double teams. Needs to have better awareness at times of his set depth in regards to the rest of the pocket. That's the only issue sometimes when you see him when he's uncovered. You see him dropping into his depth, and we talk about levels of the pocket and making sure that you're on the same level as everyone else, because if you like drop too far or if you're out too forward, you leave an opening behind you or from the side for people to twist around. Sometimes he can lose a little bit of the awareness. I think that has more to do with the change from center to guard, getting used to that kind of depth, saw a lot of him moving horizontally and vertically in zone blocking schemes, but not much of that asked him to pull across formation or outside in the alley. I'd like to see him more in some power plays just because I didn't see a ton of him. It might be the purple and black helmets. I think I mentioned this last time we talked about him. It might be the purple and black helmets on white jerseys, but he has some Ben Grubbs aspect to his game. Like for sure. Just kind of that sort of shorter, stocky, just like physical, wants to hit you in the mouth kind of guard. Where does he win? Powerful, versatile, starting interior offensive lineman. I think that's, he can play all 5 positions as he proved in college, but I think, obviously you would want to kind of keep him in the interior 3. Unanswered questions. Looks more than athletic enough to operate in zone blocking system, but does he operate when asked to? But how does he operate when he is asked to get outside consistently in power schemes? If he's asked to pull, if he's asked to get out into the alley and attack smaller targets, I just don't have a ton of tape of seeing him do that. So that's the kind of question I have.
Did you get to watch any of his tape playing right tackle?
No, because that was his sophomore year, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't think I saw any of that. No.
I ran through it last night just because I hadn't seen it yet. It was good. Like,
yeah,
it's let me rephrase it. It's not pretty.
yeah,
It's just not.
yeah.
But he's pretty effective. Like
Yeah.
he only gave up 4 pressures in his career playing tackle, and he played a lot of snaps at tackle in the Big 12. Now, I know they do some stuff to kind of hide their tackles and they get rid of the ball, quick, but it wasn't bad. And I think the fact that I've at least seen him play right tackle,
Yeah.
I've seen him play center, and then, oh, by the way, you can watch him play guard against Michigan and Georgia, and he didn't give up a pressure in either of those games. There's just a lot to like. And then on top of that, right? Like, if you're talking specifically for Dallas, he could start at left guard in week 1 if you needed him to. And Tyler Smith is starting at, left tackle. You could have him compete for center. You could have him be your swing offensive lineman at tackle. I think it just makes so much sense from a roster construction standpoint to have this guy on your team because he can legitimately play 4 different positions for you.
Yeah, the fit here makes just too much sense. Texas kid, the versatility, with the way the Cowboys roster is currently constructed, like you said, he could come in and be your backup guard. If Tyron and Tyler are both playing, he can come in and be your starting guard. If something happens there, if you decide you don't want to go that route,
or if you want to just get bigger at center, right?
Like
if you're just tired of Biotis not being strong enough, here's a 330-pound people mover at center. A lot to like.
Yeah, and I think that there's just room in his game to kind of fit into what the Cowboys' offensive line needs. And then on top of that, I also think that the problem that you're going to have with this with Avila is how do you get him, right? Because you don't want to necessarily take him at 26, though you may have to if you really want him.
Probably, yeah.
But he's not going to make it to 58, 52.
No chance.
So yeah, that's the issue. Is that you're probably going to have to figure out a way to either trade back from 26 and get him, or bite the bullet and pull the trigger at 26. I don't hate it, obviously. I mean, just because where he is, the value he's going to provide. But it would be better to try to get him maybe closer to the top of the second round as opposed to the first round, I think.
I agree. Do you have a comp for him? I mean, I know you mentioned Ben Grubbs. Is that I could see that, right? Just somebody who is just so strong and can play a couple different positions. I think that makes a lot of sense.
The other guy that kind of came to mind, and he's a little bit more of an athlete than this guy, but I thought that he had some Ron Leary to his game. Just in the size and strength.
I see that. Yep.
I think he's a little bit better athlete than Ron Leary is coming out. And I think that's why we're talking about him as a, borderline first round pick as opposed to Leary undrafted.
Yes.
Leary was probably a 4th rounder if you just take away the knee concerns that ended up not necessarily being a concern for him. I would say that this guy is, a better athlete, more versatile, higher ceiling than Leary. But I think similar sort of games.
All right. What about the best pure center in the draft? Do the Cowboys have any interest there? All that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That is bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything and anything from money line to point scores and three-pointers drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss a chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 back in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Landon, let's talk about John Michael Schmitz, a center from Minnesota. What did you think about his tape?
Yeah, I liked Schmitz a lot, and I liked him Schmitz even a lot when we were watching him in the Senior Bowl. He's a little bit undersized. He's below average NFL center size. He's short armed. I think he came in just 6'3.5", just over 300 pounds. He has under 33-inch arms, which again, at center is not such a huge deal. but it is something to keep in mind. He's battle tested, man. I mean, he's heady, he's gritty. He's played over 1,500 snaps in the last 5 seasons of the Big Ten. He's played for 5 years.
He's older. He is 24.
Yeah, I was going to mention that.
I think he turns, 25?
No, 24. He's 24 this week, actually, in 6 days. Experience equals comfort, using a variety of techniques to get the job done. So you see him doing whatever it takes. They talk about, in the NFL, you need to know how to clip, trip, and hold. And I think this guy understands that and know how to do it subtly to get the job done. That you just see him just throwing a variety of different types of blocks to get the job done, throwing a shoulder, subtly kind of throwing the guy down from behind. So he understands how to get away with what needs to get done to do the job. Good balance of experience and run game, and has snaps in both zone and gap schemes, which is important. He's a physical finisher. He tries to end the snap with his player on the ground each time. Very good initial movement. He's especially laterally. He can move side to side. His 40 and his 10-yard splits don't really show you as much of how explosive he can be. I think the jumps kind of are better indication of exactly what kind of athlete to expect, from this guy. Body balance and body control is excellent. He has very good core strength, and hip flexing allows him for good anchoring and strength to pass pro. Once he kind of drops his hips, he stops moving. Not much issue with guys over his nose. He really gets off the snap and in good position right away, and can anchor down on some of these big guys. You don't see him getting pushed back by a lot of these bigger guys, which is good. The lack of length that in his arms means that you will see him reaching at times. He'll get over his feet. That's just something you see from a lot of guys with shorter arms, is at times they get impatient and they try to get that first strike into the defender. And when they do so, they go over their feet, they reach, they bend at the waist. And so he's so good in his technique. It doesn't happen a lot, but it's definitely something that will happen to him. He's not explosive enough to get away with his feet stopping. I mean, that's the issue, is that when his feet are choppy, he can move very well, but there are times when he stops chopping his feet in pass protection, and that's when he will stop and he'll lose momentum, and that's when guys will beat him around the edge. So he needs to kind of continue to just keep his feet moving, and he will block belly to belly more than you like, and sometimes that will lead to him getting torqued, which you see sometimes with these bigger, strong defensive tackles will just torque these centers to the ground. He had a great week of Senior Bowl practices where his pass pro seemed a lot better even than where it had been just at the end of his senior year. You mentioned it. He turns 24 on March 19th. Where does he win? Smart, gritty, battle-tested, plug-and-play center who I think can come in right away and start at center for most NFL teams. And my unanswered question is, how much ceiling is left there? I think he's another guy that comes in with a lot of experience, as much experience as you could possibly want as an offensive lineman, and as a singular position where experience and intelligence is important. But my question is, I think he's kind of tapped out athletically. I don't know how much better he's going to get there. He has experience. So how much more can, experience in the NFL kind of raise the ceiling on this guy? I'm not sure. I think he's a better than average starting center right away. I don't know if he's ever going to be a Pro Bowl center or an All-Pro center. That's left to be determined, I would say.
Seems like one of those guys, I have a feeling, is going to go between the Cowboys' first and second round pick, right? Because there's going to be teams out there that view him as a plug-and-play starting center that draft 44, right? Yeah. And it's like, okay, hey, we need a center. He's got a ton of experience. Let's draft him. I don't know what to do for the Cowboys, because how much value is drafting him? Let's say he falls to 58, right?
Yeah.
Drafting a backup guard.
It's tough.
Or backup center at 58. That's
especially since
25.
Especially since likely his first few snaps in year one, unless he takes that spot from Tyler Biotish, is going to be a guard, and we don't really have any snaps of him at guard. So. I think that the draft, where you're having to draft him and what you're doing with him in year one, are two pretty big problems with this pick, because I think you want a guy like this because, and I do think that the one thing that's going to play well for the Cowboys is that there are at least two other centers in this class that I think are like starter quality right away. The Ohio State kid,
Yep.
and there's at least
Wisconsin
one more.
kid.
The Wisconsin kid, yeah.
Yep.
So, 3 Big Ten, very experienced starters. Yeah. So I think that may help him help the Cowboys in the sense if they wanted to get him, maybe drive the price down depending on who likes which one of these centers more. But yeah, I think the problem that you're going to have is that if he can't give you guard snaps, which I'm not saying he can't, I just don't know.
We haven't seen it, right?
We haven't seen much of it. So without that kind of versatility, it's not it's not as clean a fit as it is for Steve Avila because you can clearly move him where you need him.
All right, before we go, I want your reaction, just really quick reaction. If on all the 3 of these players, if the Cowboys took Osiris Torrence at 26, how would you feel?
I would feel good. I think you come in with a plus starter, a guy that immediately is better than average starter at guard. So I would feel happy with that.
Steve Avila at 26.
I will add that with the Osiris thing, I would be happy about it, but I would be like, okay, well, what's the plan here, guys?
Yep.
What's the plan? Steve Avila, I think it's like I said, at 26, I don't love, but I think I like him so much and the fit that I certainly would be upset about it.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very clean plan for what you're going to do with him.
That's the way I feel. Like I think there's probably going to be better players available, but that one makes just a ton of sense, right? Because of all the different positions. And then John Michael Schmitz at 58.
Yeah, similar situation I think with Osiris, except you don't value him as high because for the ceiling reasons. I just don't know that he's going to be necessarily an all-pro at any point, but I think he'll be a solid player. The problem with, again, drafting a high-floor solid center is that, is this a pick for next year, right? Because this is a pick that you're letting Tyler Biadasz go. And can he actually play some guard to provide you some value this year? Those are questions. If he can, then I think I like the pick. Then I think depending on where you get him, I think I of these 3, I would not love Schmitz at 26. I don't necessarily love Avila there, but I certainly would be okay with it.
Yep.
I think drafting Schmitz at 26 without knowing that if he can be a solid guard or help you in that way, that might be a reach for me for sure.
Yeah, and let's just remember that what the Cowboys like to do on the offensive line. For the most part, they like to draft offensive tackles or guys that have a history of playing offensive tackle and move them inside. Tyler Smith last year, right? Although he ended up playing left tackle. Connor Williams a couple of years ago. Zach Martin, Lyle Collins with coming out of LSU. So I've got some concerns that the Cowboys would take Osiris Torrence just because he has no experience taking tackle. But at least with Avila, I could see it a little bit, right? So we'll see. It's a fun offensive line class, though. I really liked diving into these guys.
It really is, and honestly, we could do another 4 or 5 guys that are all kind of in this range that I think are all people that the Cowboys should consider. It's a nice class this year, especially interior guys.
All right, that is it for today's show. Thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every day. Now make your second listen to Locked On NFL Draft Show. Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez provide in-depth coverage of the biggest NFL draft prospects with deep dives into sleepers and hidden gems that can change your favorite NFL franchise. Find Locked On NFL Draft wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Go follow the show on YouTube, Locked On Cowboys over there. Follow Landon at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. And tomorrow we'll be back to maybe talk about a Cowboy free agent signing. We'll see. See you guys right back here tomorrow.